Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Cara.
Vanessa, for all of the listeners out there, because this doesn't apply to you and it doesn't apply to me in our homes, but if you've got children between the ages of 6 and 12 in your home, then they are living in a space called middle childhood. It's a term that actually describes this age range.
And our guest, it's very funny. Our guest is Sheryl Ziegler, who is a licensed clinical psychologist and play therapist. And her new book is called The Crucial Years, and it's all about middle childhood. And she's so funny because she says at some point in the episode, by the way, I'm not making up the term middle childhood. She's like, it is an actual psychological term. But here's the crazy thing. No one's ever heard of it. People don't even know it exists.
Because kids between 6 and 12 get dropped like hot potatoes by all the companies that are selling hardcore to the parents and trusted adults of babies and toddlers, and then older kids. But this adorably sweet, delicious, then complicated swath of kids, right? 6 or 7 years worth of them, that group is overlooked. It's like, yeah, they're in grammar school. And it's like, no, there's a whole world of adults who care about these kids and are watching these kids. And what we get into in this conversation is that swath felt very standalone until puberty started to creep into it.
Right. So as anyone who listens to this podcast knows, puberty now starts on average between 8 and 9 for girls and 9 and 10 for boys, which means it sits squarely in this middle childhood period. In the past, it didn't, but it's transformed how we should be thinking about these ages. And we get into this in the conversation with Sheryl. And what's so wonderful about this episode is Sheryl has a way of both bringing in the experiences and insights that she hears from people in her practice all the time, but then she also has a way of approaching the answer to those challenges in such a relatable way. And mostly her work is about reframing this age, which is sort of, some people call it the forgotten years. It's sort of at sea. It's kind of a no man's land, as an age of opportunity. And we love that because so many, the kids that we think so much about, many of them are in this age, but also it changes the family dynamic when you see a stage as sort of something to skip over, but instead you see it as an opportunity, as a time of wonderful connection and meaning in your house.
So if you have kids in this age range, this is going to be a great listen. If you have kids who are older, it's a wonderful walk down memory lane. I got to say, just being in conversation with her, Vanessa, I was flashing back to all sorts of moments, not just in my kids' lives, but frankly, in my own. So I hope this is an enjoyable listen for everyone.
Hi, Sheryl.
Hi, how are you guys?
Sheryl, we met on Zoom at the height of the pandemic, and it feels like a really long time ago at this point.
It really does. And I don't know that either one of us knew where we were headed, what we were going to be writing or talking about. So look at us here, April of 2025.
You know, Sheryl, we met last week on Zoom, and it feels like a lifetime ago.
That's very true. Well, of course, I've known about your work for so long. And when Vanessa and I just started talking, it was just like, hey, we're both interested in this puberty stuff. And what are you doing? Oh, this is what I'm doing. And I just love so much that I feel like I met a true colleague in this space in the two of you. So it's very exciting for me to get to talk about this stuff with you.
Well, thank you. That is very kind. We can just end the episode now because we've just had a nice time. Sheryl, you're on today to talk about a topic we've actually never precisely covered on the podcast. You have a new book out called The Crucial Years, but the topic of that book is the concept of middle childhood. And for those of you who are tempted to think about all of the middle children in your life, It's not about that. So all of you middle children out there,
We see you.
we see you, but this is not for you. This is for everybody. Sheryl, can you talk about, from a developmental perspective, what middle childhood is? And then we're going to go deep.
Yes. Okay. So we all know early childhood, right? And the reason why we all know it is because there has been an intentional effort and campaigning around that for the last few decades to make sure we understood first the importance of 0 to 3 and then 0 to 5. And so because of that very concerted effort, we all understand this importance of preschool and of babies and toddlers and attachment. And you can go into your pediatrician's office if you have a 0 to 5 infant or child, and they will tell you precisely to the week what exactly should be happening. And so it's wonderful, beautiful. That's amazing. And then we all also know, in a different way, the importance of adolescence, mostly because people are very challenged by adolescence. So it's, the things to look forward to when you have teenagers and it's very fear-based, all the, horrible things that can happen. And so we're all very prepared for that. Plus, we also have a lot better of a memory around what we did and what we were like when we were teenagers. So that one's an easier one also to kind of relate to. But what happens is there's a whole developmental phase in the middle, like many other things in the middle that sometimes get forgotten or overlooked, which is called middle childhood. And this is just as important of a developmental phase as all the others. And that is 6 to 12. And so what I'll say about it is I'm not inventing a developmental stage. It's always been there. I promise.
You're
not
just
making
a brand ambassador.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've come up with this genius idea that 6 to 12, it's something. No, that's always been there. Different theorists in psychological kind of work call it different things. Freud called it latency, and Erik Erikson called it the stage of industry versus inferiority. And so this is a real thing. It really has been studied. It's actually really important. It's also changed a bit because of puberty. And so here we are. That's my quick answer.
I'm having a moment about the memory of sort of 0 to 3. Any memories we have are, I don't want to say 100% of them, but 99% of them are informed by pictures and videos and things that we've seen and these stories that have been told to us about our early childhood, right? And of course, the memories of adolescence being so strong and powerful. But I'm on a group text with all of my grammar school friends, kindergarten through 6th grade. Our entire class has been reconnected. Actually, it might have moved over to email now, which is a sign of our old age. But regardless, we're all reconnected, and people are starting to share pictures, and they're starting to share stories. And it's amazing because those aren't the memories that are in the forefront of your brain, but they're so in there. And once someone brings up a story about this party or that thing that happened at the track meet, everyone else is chiming in going, I remember that. And it's like a recovered set of memories that are as real and as important and as tangible as the ones that are easier to recall from our older tween and teen years.
Absolutely. And, when you talk about that, all I can go to is think about all of the incredibly important monumental events that happened when you were in grade school. Let's say end of kinder through 5th or 6th grade. All of the things. That's a time where you may have moved, your parents may have gotten a divorce, you may have had a sibling that was born, you may have experienced your first death. There are really major things that we can think of when we think of our childhood. But I'm going to tell you right now, moving forward, this generation of kids will actually have a really different experience of middle childhood for multiple reasons.
So Sheryl, before we dive into sort of the external inputs to middle childhood, because we will spend a bunch of time doing that. What are the skills and what is the growth kids can experience during these middle childhood years? What are the, I want to frame them as opportunities. As anyone who has taught or cared for a kid during these years, this growth and development is profoundly uneven. And it's not like, oh, your baby should be sitting up, at 6 months. It's like somewhere between 7 and 12, your kid will figure out how to pack their bag and make sure it makes it onto the bus. But there are developmental milestones that at some point, if they are neurotypical and they are in a setting that allows for that, they should be hitting. So what are some of those things, Sheryl?
Yes, and you nailed it. There's a lot of ifs and asterisks here, different than 0 to 5. Although, of course, 0 to 5, there's variability. There's nothing like middle childhood for so many reasons. Your living conditions, the schooling you go to, literally, whether you have a caretaker, whether you live with extended family or not, there's so many variables. But the way that in the crucial years, I break it down, I thought it could be helpful, and I hadn't seen it anywhere else, is I did go by age, so an entire year, and I put sort of a, like you said, neurotypical, here's what you can expect kind of thing. So the way I break it down is social emotional. So socially and emotionally, a lot of friendship stuff is happening. And that's probably a strong memory of what we remember, who your best friend was. Maybe you were in a Girl Scout troop. If you have a boy, maybe they were in a Boy Scout troop, those kinds of things. So socially and emotionally, all of a sudden, the main people in your life are not necessarily in your home. They are now outside of your home. And you care a lot about, who you play with and all those kinds of things. So that's one area. Then there's self-esteem. And because self-esteem is really formed 6 to 12, I put a piece around self-esteem. So let's say age 6. This is the way I put it. They may value their own worth in terms of distinct areas called competencies. So at that point, as 6-year-olds, it might be like, look what I can do with blocks. I can build up blocks, right? Or I can read a couple of words. So their sense of self-esteem is based off of what can I do, right? It's not yet internalized. It's very external. Look at the results of what I can do. Then I have problem solving. And problem solving is also kind of AKA cognitive development, how they think. So we look at things like, how do they figure out problems? What do they do to solve them? What is even their approach? So that we see continue to change and develop over, the 6 years. And I have moral development. And that was very interesting for me to think about it, because I can tell you, I don't know that with any of my kids, I ever thought to myself, we are now in moral development, right? You just sort of go, oh my gosh, they hit that kid over the head with a thing. Do they have any empathy?
Well, and Sheryl, also, I remember when my then 7-year-old was doing a lot of lying. And I was like, oh my God, I'm raising a complete jerk. I'm raising a liar. How am I raising a liar? And then I did some reading and I was like, oh, this isn't about lying at all. The lying is just the symptom on the surface. This is about self-esteem and not wanting to disappoint me and learning to own his failures and mistakes, right? And I was like, okay, I feel a lot better. I mean, I read that after I screamed at him for drawing on the newly painted walls, drawing in Sharpie, I will add. Yeah, it's a core memory, and it's really a core memory for him because we talk about it at least once a month still. He's now 19. But yes, there are things that we don't think of as problem solving or moral development or any of those things because we get so focused on the behavior we see and not what it is as an underlying human development. And this is going to become a theme, I think, in the conversation. What do you see as we think about their development and we think about opportunities and folks are looking down the barrel of adolescence where they feel less powerful or maybe a little more powerless as adults? Where are kids developmentally in terms of hearing feedback, getting guidance, support from the adults in their lives in a way that may shift when they move out of middle childhood?
Absolutely. During these 6 years, you, the parent, caregiver, are still the most important, most influential person in that child's life by and large. And that's why I think of this as the golden age of opportunity. And then what happens is once they reach adolescence, the teen years, and again, it's not a perfect science. It's not necessarily 13 comes and boom, it's happening, but it's probably 13, 14. And at that point, the parent becomes secondary to their friends, to their peers, to social phenomenon and pop culture. And that's what makes parents feel like, oh my gosh, my kid doesn't even listen to me anymore. You know, when they're 11 or 10, they think you are the smartest person ever. You have the answers to every question they have, right? If they're doing schoolwork and they say, "Can you help me?" Chances are you can. Like, yes, I can. Here's how to do this. Here's how to say this. If they are running, if they're throwing a ball with someone in a backyard, they're doing any of those things, you can hang. You can probably catch the ball and throw with them. All of a sudden they become adolescents. You're too slow. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You don't know. Math isn't taught that way, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they're like, actually, you don't know anything.
It's so amazing because I've never heard it explained that way, but it's a great way of looking at the phenomenon. Their friends don't know anything either, by the way, but their friends have just bested you on the list of people to go to give them advice, information, whether it's about how to throw the ball or about the math problem or about social issues. And I've always heard it explained as sort of there's this switch that goes off and it's a socialization shift and all this. But I like your explanation because actually they do physically, emotionally, socially outpace us in certain ways. The math gets impossible. It's like,
oh yeah,
I don't
I'm
know.
done in 6th grade. Like I'm out of my league.
I was a good math student and I am baffled. And then the way they solve problems, I'm like, I have no idea what's happening here. I'm just stepping away, just backing off.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's some good parenting, Vanessa. But Sheryl, I would love to pull the lens back a little bit now and revisit a comment you made at the top, which is how different it's going to, these memories and this lens is going to be for today's not middle children, because to Vanessa's earlier point, but like middle childhood children, how it's going to look and feel so different when they look back. Why?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to keep it very practical like the last one. I don't know about you guys, but when I look at my photo albums, actual photo albums, I have maybe my school picture, right? The solo of me like in 4th grade and the whole class picture and maybe a couple, maybe 5 from each year. And that's it. They're very, very scarce. And so we don't have pictures to go, oh yeah, we did this, this, and this. They, on the other hand, will have pictures documenting everything, plus video, plus comments, plus their parents' social media posts. So there's going to be this abundance of data. It might be selective, but it's still data that says, here's every day actually of your middle childhood years. We've got it all documented. Crazy. Don't worry. Right? That's one thing. So the other thing is, the average age for a kid in this country to just get a smartphone is 8 years old. So they are going to have this experience where they don't have to dig that hard at whatever random questions. And that's the cool thing about school age years. These middle years, they're filled just like toddlers, but they're filled with questions in their mind. I heard this saying, what does that mean? And we had them too. But the best we could do was, maybe ask somebody or truly just daydream about the answer. There wasn't, the encyclopedia wasn't going to give us the answer to the questions that we were thinking about. But they have access to the internet, which will give them whatever the answer is going to give them to every one of their questions. And their minds are exploding, right? They've got these connections that are happening in their neural pathways at these incredibly high rates. It's not just 0 to 5 where this is happening. And what's happening is some are getting really solidified and some are dying off. Whatever they don't use it, it goes away. And so they are going to have this experience where A, they're going to have lots of visual memories, and B, they do have the internet, which gives them the answers to everything. And then C, you throw on top of it how incredibly young kids are on social media and getting either validation or lack of validation from their peers and the world. That is actually rewiring this stage.
So, Sheryl, building on that, let's talk about ways in which this is an opportunity, right? God, I hope there's positive in there somewhere, and ways in which this is actually concerning or harmful. And as a result, what role do parents and caregivers play in the face of that? And I'm wondering, let's start with opportunities first. What are some of the opportunities in the way their middle childhood is different now?
I think the opportunity first starts with the parents. Parents, again, I don't know about yours, but parents, when we were growing up, weren't talking to us about puberty or bullying or self-esteem or your relationship with food, those kinds of things. We have an opportunity now where parents really do have guides. They can be advised how to have these kind of conversations, hopefully before they ever happen. But even if it happens, even if something happens, I just had literally someone say to me last night, oh my gosh, the last year we've been struggling. My daughter really was diagnosed with anorexia. She has a full-blown eating disorder. And she said, we were just heartbroken to find out that this really started when she was 11. And we are seeing those things. So the opportunity is to say, I noticed something about my kid, whatever that might be. And even if you're not positive, you can find out, are these warning signs? Because we also have that access to information, and then talk to them about it. So the opportunity is the education's out there and the encouragement to talk openly about mental health issues, about, self-care and stress, that's out there. I think that's one huge opportunity.
Can I ask a quick question about that opportunity? Do you think the shift is in the access to information that the kids get in that example, all the influences that are coming to the child? Or is it the access to information that the parents get? Or is it both?
I think the opportunity lies much more with parents. I think parents can set up their kids to find information in good, healthy, reliable places. But if they're not having that conversation, their kids are just going to go to the unknown. We just don't know. Yeah. And so that's why I'm really a fan of not demonizing technology or even social media. I think we just need to educate first and foremost ourselves as parents, because confidence is a huge part of this. In these middle years, you have to be confident. And many parents that I talk to are not. They're like, my kid knows way more than I do. They know how to get around more than I do. So I think the opportunity is for a parent to say, hey, before I give my kid an iPad, a smartphone, access, I'm going to first educate myself around parental controls, around what these certain things mean. And then I'm going to do this together with them. And they're going to know that I could monitor their stuff at any time, that there really are limits and boundaries. I think there's a healthy way to create this information age as an opportunity for kids too, but it starts with parents.
I think it's such an important thing for the listener to be able to hold two things to be true. So everything you're saying is so right on. This is not an all or none situation with access to this information for kids, right? On the other hand, if we all think back through the lens of our own memories, a lot of the issues that kids are struggling with today have existed for a very long time, often in lower numbers, frankly. But I think about my own practice where I took care of very young kids with eating disorders. And a lot of what we're seeing today is a shared awareness of it, which sometimes makes some of these problems feel compounded or bigger or more in our face. And some of them existed a long time ago also. And so it's hard, but I agree with you. Like it starts with the adults, partly because we have to hold all these things to be true. And we have to take all these different inputs, everything from the memories of our own middle childhood through to what is coming at us and what is coming at our kids. And it can feel heavy to hold all of those elements. And yet that it is on us, right?
It is. And, when you said it can feel heavy for the parents, I want to say, I haven't said what happens to parents during this stage. At age 5 or 6, when your kid's finally in kindergarten, especially for women, this is an opportunity where they sometimes go, let's say they were working part-time or they were not working outside of the home. They're like, I'm going to go back to work now. I'm going to start freelancing now. I'm going to do my side hustle. Right. And they're like excited about this. First, they're nervous.
Cheryl, right? when my youngest was around this age and they did that thing in school where they asked the kids, like, what does your mommy or daddy do after they drop you off at school? And I was like, starting a business. And he was like, my mommy goes and drinks coffee all day and then she picks me up. And I was like, oh my God, of course. Yeah, there is there's a freedom, there's a confusion, there's an identity shift, there's a pressure to kind of like be someone new as you sort of drag yourself out. Maybe people have paused work, maybe people have been busting their butts and they're actually excited to take a breath. It's so interesting. I hadn't thought of this age as an opportunity for parents as much. It's a really interesting reframing. What happens to us? Do you want to talk about grief for a second? Because I also feel like I didn't feel this way, but apparently other people feel this way, which is they're sad that they don't have little kids anymore.
Yes. So, yes, but let me put you, you might not have felt the grief. And I think for me personally, I felt mixed feelings. I definitely, like with my first, it was like hysterical kindergarten drop off, mom crying kind of thing. But I did have 2 others. And then with my last one, there was a mixed feeling. There was a feeling of like, I can breathe a little bit more. Even if they were in preschool, there was still preschoolish stuff going on, a lot of sickness. You couldn't really fully rely, like for sure, right? Because they just get sick so often and things happen. And days are shorter away. But let me put you in the mindset, when you drop a kid off at kindergarten, first grade, you are also now dropping them off for the first time at soccer. And you can go 45 minutes, 60 minutes. You're not sitting anymore in the grass on the sidelines talking to the parents or in your car working away, right? That's shifted. The other thing you do is you're now starting to drop off at play dates. That's very new. Or someone comes over to your house and you don't have to sit down with them so much. Like think of a 4-year-old play date. You're working the whole time.
Right.
Okay, let's make Play-Doh now and I'll take you guys to the park and then I'll take you for ice cream or whatever it might be. Now they're playing more independently. And so you also have a break in the sense that they are now being dropped off. They are now being supervised, monitored, and even led by many other adults, not just you anymore. So for some people, there is a grief around that. Like, I have mixed feelings. Like, I'm happy to be doing this, but my gosh, like, do you think it's okay? I mean, I talk to parents all the time that are like, what if I don't know? What if their dance teacher is some kind of weirdo, but I don't actually know it? And they're sitting in some dance studio with someone, or my kid wants to go to so-and-so's house. I don't really know those parents anymore. We're not in a play group anymore where I have a sense for them. So there's a big trust factor too. You're handing your kid over for hours at a time sometimes to people you don't know that well. And that's where the grief and the fear can exist for some parents.
That is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Let's just say it is a big deal. It is a big deal in terms of safety. It is a big deal in terms of, so the fear factor, the anxiety that goes along with it. It's also a big deal in terms of letting your kid spread their wings and taking some baby steps yourself. These transitions are a big deal. And because so many people in our listening audience have kids who are older, they're probably thinking right now exactly what you know, Sheryl, all too well, not just professionally, but also personally, is like, oh, just wait. Oh, just wait until the next step up of independence, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And I think that's in part, that was the spirit and the catalyst for writing this book and going here on these years that don't have another book out. There's not another book on middle childhood. Nobody's really talking about this stage. And that was part of it. It was like, at the end of every chapter, I have a little box that says looking ahead. And it's like, whatever the topic is, like if you can nail this communication conversation well now, let's say about, just, hey, bud, like your room smells, you smell, you have body odor, whatever it might be, right? Then fast forward 3 or 4 years from now, when you've got to say something else to them that's uncomfortable, and it might be about, who knows, something about their physique or just something that you like, oh God, I don't want to say that to my kid. Well, if you've done that already pretty consistently, 6 to 12, and they're used to you having kind of tough or hard, uncomfortable conversations, you are so much more likely to have that invitation or at least the open door when they are 14, 15, 16, when otherwise they're just like, what are you even talking to me about? Get out of my room. I don't want to talk about these things. You can't wait. That is the point. You can't wait.
Sheryl, let's talk about that for a second, because you spoke earlier about this 6 to 12 age as a time when parents are still kind of omniscient and kids want to be around us and they trust us to have the answers. And that affords us an opportunity to build connection and a foundation before the moment they turn around and are like, ugh. So let's dive in a little bit to what is effective for parents to do in these years in building trust and communication and connection, so that when they seemingly turn their backs, although as we all know, they don't actually turn their backs, it just feels that way, they're still tethered to us in healthy ways. What are some ways developmentally that are successful in communicating with kids in middle childhood?
So, you said the key word there, which was communicating. Communicate with them. I think we can look at our kids in this middle childhood time and think that they're still young and think that, we don't want to talk about like hard stuff with them already, right? People will say to me, I don't want to talk to them about the notion of consent or alcohol, right? Or vaping, whatever these issues are. So what I say is this is a great opportunity because they'll still hold your hand. They will still cuddle with
best.
you, right? They want to sleep with you if they had like it's a weekend or, dad's away and there's room in the bed. Like, can I sleep with you tonight? Can we watch a movie? I mean, right? The best. And I still have a 12-year-old that will give me that 60% of the time. So I'm hanging on, right? I'm soaking it up. And so what I would say is like, just get comfortable bringing up conversations that are a little bit hard. So I just got asked about this an hour ago. So I'll just use this example about active shooter drills at school. Okay, let's use that one. That's very applicable to school age kids. They've got them as much as they do fire drills. And it freaks kids out. They do not like them. They are anxiety provoking for kids. So get used to saying, first of all, I would say most parents will tell me they don't have warnings when these things happen. So it's not like you can always prepare them, but if you can prepare them, hey, tomorrow, I just got an email from the principal. They said tomorrow you're going to have one of those active shooter drills. So let's go over that again, what that means and why it's important, right? That's ideal scenario A. Scenario B is more likely to be your kid comes home, they may or may not even tell you. But if they do tell you, that you don't just go, oh, really? Oh, like, and just keep driving, right? Like say like, what again, what do you think that means again? Because you want to know, what does that even mean to them? How was that for you? How was that for your friends? How do you think the teachers looked? Why do you think you guys do this? What do you think would really happen if, like you're throwing it out there because you're not implanting ideas in this time period. Remember, they're bursting with questions and ideas.
Okay, can we take the next step on your example? So let's say there's an active shooter drill, and let's say you ask those questions and get curious, and the response is, I hate these drills. They completely stress me out. I don't think I'm going to be able to go to sleep tonight. I'm so worried. I'm so scared. Every time these people start crying or people get really upset, what's the best next step?
Yeah. So the first thing is hang in there with them. Okay. Hang in there, because what's going to happen is you as a parent are going to want to fix it. And you're going to want to reassure them that there's like almost a 0% chance this is ever going to happen. And you do want to do that. You want to be reassuring, but you don't want to do it in a sense of like, basically your feelings don't like, they're totally invalid because this is probably really never going to happen. Like, let's just move on. Let's go like eat dinner and have ice cream and like forget about it. You don't want to do that. That's called invalidating. So to validate doesn't mean we're giving it a spotlight and we're going to let it consume our whole entire night. But to validate, it says, you know, when I was your age, right? When I was your age, or when I was, doing drills, we only did fire drills. And fire drills, like I never did see a fire. And so I didn't feel that same fear. I think if I were in 5th grade and we were doing these, I would be really scared too, right? Right there. All that does right there in that moment is say to the kid, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. You understand me. You're validating me, right? And so then they look at you and they're like, yeah, I hate it. I hate it so much. We were all in a corner and we all had to be quiet. And then I will tell you, kids tell me this all the time. And then there was Ryan and he like started laughing or he was loud. But what if this was real with, right? So now what they're doing is they're scanning and like, who's doing the right thing or not, right? And then you go, yeah, I can see that. I can imagine if Ryan or any other kid were making jokes or something that makes you feel really unsafe. I'm sorry you felt unsafe today. Now that's empathy. So now we've got validation. First of all, we have holding space. Then we have validation. Now we have empathy, right? And then we go to the next stage, which is probably action. Gosh, yeah. God, I'm so sorry that happened today. What do you think we can do? Do you think there's something we can tell Mrs. Smith or we can tell the school about maybe how to do this a little bit better so that we do practice? Because it's important, even though there's a teeny tiny chance and, God willing, this will never ever happen. But just even for the teeny chance, we do have to practice. So now I am supporting that the drill needs to happen as hard as it is, but I'm giving them agency. Is there something we can do? It could be something as simple as, yeah, like, could we ask Mrs. Smith if we could have a warning? Could we ask her? And it's like, sure, I totally support that, right? And these things, reform around these active shooter drills, actually, I just want to say right now, needs to happen all over the country. Parents are not warned, kids are not warned, the whole thing.
But what's so incredible is that example, if you take the specifics out, applies to so much, right?
Fill in the blank.
Yes, absolutely. And this is training ground for parents and trusted adults for their kids as their kids get older, right? Because we do need to practice going through the steps that you outlined in terms of holding space and validating and empathizing. And then number 4 is problem solving, but not problem solving for them. Like that, Vanessa and I must spend 80% of our time living in the space of trying to help each other. Not each other, I was going to say each other, help other people, but really each other do those things in our own homes.
And Sheryl, what I love about the way you walked through that example, by the way, I would totally do a role play with you anytime. I could tell you'd be like a really good role play partner.
You can take right my spot.
You can take Cara's spot so she can quietly sit on the side. What I love about it is you capture kids' awareness, their curiosity, the depth of feeling, the nature of their worry, right? It's so tempting to write off grade school kids as just grade school kids, right? Like whatever, they're like doing their thing. But in fact, they're so interesting. And the things they ask and the things they say before some of the cynicism sets in and they start to filter their reactions and their comments and they become like a little more socially aware that certain things should or shouldn't or can or can't be expressed. Before that happens, there's an openness to them that has both the sort of like interesting thought process and a willingness to express it that is so fun and so cool and so interesting. And we don't want to shut that down. We want to empower it. I want to carry that with us, that keeping in mind. And I want to think about how earlier puberty is impacting the sort of normal or ordinary or historical trajectory of middle childhood. We talked a little bit about how tech and access to tech and phones and social media is impacting it. How is earlier puberty, how is physically changing earlier impacting kids' experiences and parents' experiences during these years?
Yeah, I think anyone who has a third or fourth grader right now usually has that sense of like, whoa, I thought I had longer. I thought I had more time. But we're talking about bullying. We're talking about breast development in bras. We're talking about maybe feelings, romantic feelings for someone else. Like, whoa, how can I slow this down? Those are like the real words that people say to me. And so it's impacting it because no longer, it's like, I think we have K1-2, where we're pretty safe from smartphones. We're pretty safe from social media. It would be very early. It would be more like precocious puberty if it was then. So like we have K1-2, but we think K1-2 goes on to 3, 4, 5. And that's not what happens anymore. So it feels like you go from, I have my little kid with the missing 2 front teeth and all that cute stuff. And all of a sudden, how is it the third grade feels more like middle school? And because of earlier puberty, that is in part what's happening. And I like to remind people, puberty starts in the brain. So we're not seeing that outside piece. We're seeing behaviors. We're looking at emotional roller coasters, but that's happening in their brains. And so in third and fourth grade, they're having mood swings. They might be even talking back to you a little bit. They're having some mean girl stuff. I, again, had somebody say to me last week, I'm going to be honest, it's my kid who's the bully. We've got kids being cruel to other kids. And these are things that we as parents thought we had longer. We thought we had more time until you had to deal with it. So again, the school age years were like, the breather. They're just, and what I will say, what parents are focused on, because they are focused. They're not ignoring their kids. They're focused on the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They're focused on academics, right? That's what the focus is. Look how much you're learning. You're so smart. And so while that's all happening with this earlier puberty piece, we have issues that are coming up much sooner than ever before.
I mean, a quick comment, and then to pick up that thread, the quick comment is bravo to the parent who said, my kid is the bully. It takes a lot for a parent to acknowledge that. And in a one-to-one situation where one child is bullying one other child, that means half of the children in the dynamic are the bullies. And it's very hard for parents to see that in their child and to acknowledge it and to work through it. So kudos to that parent. Picking up the thread that you were just talking about in terms of kind of what the arc is around these brain shifts and these social emotional shifts and what we are seeing when we're seeing it. I'm wondering what you think we as the royal we can do to scaffold these kids, because while puberty starts in the brain, their brains are no more developed than ours were in terms of cognitive abilities. I think the praise of you're learning so much is probably a reaction to these parents mean well, a reaction to valuing someone based upon how they look or other sort of metrics that, as when we were growing up, we're valued in a way that we're like, we don't want to do that. So we're praising something else. But here you've got this constellation you've just described. You've got a kid who's thinking like a young kid, starting to develop like an older kid. So how do we scaffold them? How do we support them and hold all of it to be true and make space for all of it when these things bump up against each other right smack in middle childhood?
Right there. So one of the things I think it was you, Vanessa, that said in the beginning was that there's this uneven development. And probably the biggest piece of advice I could start with is to understand that, let's just take a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old, let's say they're very athletic. Boom, their motor development might be like 13-year-old. And their social development might be just like a 10-year-old. Their emotional development could be like an 8-year-old. Right? And their cognitive development, let's say they're really bright. Oh, boom, they're a 12-year-old. They're 2 reading grades above, right? And parents are always very proud of that. They're 2 reading levels above their grade level. That's always a point of pride. And so when we look at the markers of development, they can be all over. And what I like to say is the way that you want to treat your child respond to them and be in relationship with them is their emotional development, that emotional age. And when I do that with parents who bring their kids in, they usually say they're a year or two younger than their chronological age. And then I say, okay, so let's think about your 10-year-olds. Let's just say he is 4'11", he's 120 pounds. He's getting big. He's got all these feelings that are all over. But emotionally, let's think about an 8-year-old. And then sometimes I say to them, I want you to picture him the size he was when he was 6, whatever it takes for you to imagine what an 8-year-old or his best buddy who's, maybe a third of his size. Picture that, and treat him as such, hold him as such. And so when I tell parents that, like, you have permission that yes, he's got all this uneven development, but you're going to talk to him like you would his emotional age. You meet him, that's meeting him where he's at. That's what I tell people. Meet your child where they're at. At 8 years old, you're going to treat him different. And that's the biggest thing with this earlier puberty. I used a boy as an example, but a girl who's more mature, more sexually developed, she does have breasts. We know that they're more likely to be sexualized. They're more likely to have expectations put onto them that are age inappropriate. So we want to treat them their emotional age. I want people to get that notion. Everybody has an emotional age. Treat your child as such.
Sheryl, let's talk for a second about how race plays into these challenges, because we know that Black girls who on average start puberty earlier than white girls, and Latina girls are kind of somewhere in the middle. We're waiting for data on other racial groupings. Black girls are more likely to be sexualized. They're more likely to be adultified. And that is clearly tied partially to their earlier puberty, that they look older than they actually are to the outside world. How do we help the world? How do we help teachers and administrators and folks in the shoe store and all of those people help see kids the age they are, not the age they appear to be, and treat them as such so that we help keep them safe?
This is so important. And I want to say something right now. If right now you are listening to this and your child is not Black or brown, you need to still pay real close attention. Because here's what this looks like. You see a girl who is 10 years old and she's in 4th grade and she is very tall. She's very developed. This is what people say. Oh, hi. Wow. Look at you. Look how tall and grown up you look. I bet you're going to break some hearts out there. I bet you're going to be playing basketball next year, right? What we do is we start projecting onto them stereotypes, and we start projecting onto them things that we don't think of as hurtful. We're not being mean. Somebody, what's so wrong? What's so wrong with telling a kid that they're tall, they should play basketball or volleyball, or that, they're beautiful, and so they're going to be breaking some hearts? There's actually a few things wrong with that. And I know it's an unintended consequence, but what you do every time you see a kid in puberty, a kid who is still developing, and you comment about their weight, their height, what you assume that they're doing, what you're doing is you're putting pressure onto them. You are assigning things to them that might be so not a fit. They're thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to go home and play with my dolls. But the world is telling me I'm too mature and old to be doing that. So I guess I'll stop. Right? Or I've had tall kids say to me, I'm not even good at basketball. I'm not even athletic. But everybody puts that pressure onto me that I should be doing this. Or, girls and boys. And so if we go back to specifically to race, now let's say we're talking about a Black boy. When you say to him, well, look at you. I mean, it looks like you're ready for, to be in the workforce. You're ready for a job. You're ready for this. What that also says, though, is the world is scared of you. The world looks at you like you are an adult, right? And we know the data says that starting at the age of 10, people already assign fear to Black boys and sexualized thoughts and words to Black and brown girls. These things matter, and we have to stop commenting on a child who has no control over their growth. They don't have control over their hair or their height or, their breast development or their muscle development. We have got to stop commenting. And if you're listening and you go, oh man, I just said that to my grandkid, you can autocorrect.
Mhm.
We're not demonizing you. This is new information for so many people. Just, you got to say to yourself, though, I got to stop. I got to stop doing this.
Yeah, so there's this term unconscious bias that has been used for a very long time. And for those who don't know, for the uninitiated, that's what this is. This is sort of we all carry with us bias. And it's often not consciously recognized by us. And we are not bad people for carrying it, but we are better people for recognizing it, recognizing where we're wrong, and flipping those things in our own mind, and then changing the way we talk about things out loud. Because if we don't do that, Sheryl, what I'm hearing you say is we are just perpetuating all of these pain points for, groups of kids who are really victimized by this way of being seen in the world.
And to your point earlier, Sheryl, if we treat kids older than they are, they feel pressure to act older than they are. And that's where the statistics about, particularly we have a lot of data on girls who enter puberty earlier are at risk for earlier sexual activity, substance use, and concerns about their mental health, if not worse mental health outcomes, because of their exposure to, quote, older activities, because people are treating them older. So if you think, oh, what's the harm? Why are they going on about this? Because kids' safety and future well-being is at risk if we do not treat kids the age they are instead of the age they appear to be. It is that important. And I so appreciate your underlining that, Sheryl. One place to end on an optimistic and empowering note, what is one thing that you wish parents and educators knew about kids in the middle years that, based on your experience as a therapist, they get wrong so far and you'd love to see them do it differently?
I'd love that question. They need to understand that our kids are not going outside and playing anymore. That play, which is the language of childhood, toys are their words and play is their language. We are taking that away from them by overscheduling them, by putting them in highly organized sports and activities, in putting them in enrichment programs. Sort of, it's the modern day almost keeping up with the Joneses. And we are doing it from a place of what we believe is love, but it's actually fear. I talk to so many parents who say, but if I don't do the tutoring, if I don't do the club, if I don't do the one-on-one trainings, my kid is going to fall behind. And so there's no trust in the process of play, in the process of childhood, creativity. Look at all of the amazing tech we have in the world that marvels everybody. Go look who created that. There's a lot of Gen X that created that. And Gen X spent a whole lot of time outside, no one-on-ones, no specialized anything, because boredom or unstructured time is when the brain can be creative. And if I could impart one thing to parents, it's trust the process.
That's right.
It is there for a reason, and no amount of technology, AI, or certain advancements is ever going to change that. I fundamentally believe that to be true. So playing, unstructured, that's how kids learn. That's how kids learn social skills. That's how they practice empathy. That's how they practice roles in the world. What does it mean to be a mommy, a daddy? What does it mean to be a teacher, right? Remember playing teacher? Like how amazing that was? And we just take that away. Like after second grade, it's kind of gone. But it's not meant to be. So that would be, I think, the greatest lesson that I wish I could impart. If it has to be one parent at a time, fine. But pods of parents is even more powerful.
Thank you so much, Sheryl. Thank you for coming on. We love the book, The Crucial Years, and We love being in this world, swimming in this water with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for starting the conversation around puberty, earlier puberty, the importance of it, and all the things that you're doing. So thank you guys too.
Thank you so much for listening. You can email us with questions, feedback, or episode requests at podcast@lessawkward.com.
If you want to learn more about what we do to make this whole stage of life less awkward for everyone involved, our parent membership, our school health ed curriculum, our keynote talks, and more are all at lessawkward.com.
And if you want products that make puberty so much more comfortable, visit myumla.com.